Good day, everyone. This is Teacher Cherry. In this video, we are going to find the sum and the product of roots of quadratic equation and determine the quadratic equation given the sum of roots and product of roots. The sum and the product of the roots of quadratic equations may be derived by using the values of the coefficients a, b, and c. Recall that the roots of quadratic equations can be determined using the quadratic formula x equals negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We let x sub 1 be equal to the negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and x sub 2 equals negative b minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We can now determine the sum and the product of roots. Let's have first the sum of the roots of quadratic equation. We now have x sub 1 plus x sub 2 equals, we copy this for x sub 1 plus this for x sub 2. We now have negative b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac minus b minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over, we copy the same denominator. And then, we can cancel out square root of b squared minus 4ac and negative b squared minus 4ac. We now have negative b minus b is equal to negative 2b over 2a, which is the denominator. We now simplify. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative, and then we have b for the numerator over a for the denominator. This is now the sum of the roots of quadratic equation. Remember, negative b over a is the sum of the roots of quadratic equation. Let's now have the product of the roots of quadratic equation. We now have x sub 1 times x sub 2. This is our x sub 1 and this is our x sub 2. We now multiply the denominators. As you can see, this is a product of the sum and difference of binomial. To find the product of sum and difference of binomial, we square the first term and we also square the second term. And then the middle term, the sign of the middle is negative. And then we also multiply the denominators, which are 2a and 2a. So we get the square of 2a. We simplify. The square of negative b is b squared. The square of the square root of b squared minus 4ac will be b squared minus 4ac. The square root and the square will be cancelled out. And then, we multiply the negative sign to b squared, so we have negative b squared. We multiply negative by negative 4ac, it will now be positive 4ac. All over, the square of 2a is 4a squared. B squared minus b squared will be cancelled out, and it will give us 4ac over 4a squared. Simplifying this, we will get the product of the roots of quadratic equation, which will be c over a. 4 over 4 is 1. And then we have a squared in the denominator while a in the numerator. So, a na lang ang matitira sa denominator. So, we have c over a. This is now the product of the roots of quadratic equation. Remember, c over a is the product of the roots of quadratic equation. Let's have examples of finding the sum and product of roots para mas maintindihan natin. Let's have example 1. Find the sum and the product of roots of the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals 0. To find the sum and the product of roots of this equation, let us first identify the values of a, b, and c. A is positive 3, b is positive 6, c is negative 9. Always remember that the quadratic equation must be in standard form before identifying the values of a, b, and c. Then, after that, we will substitute these values to the sum and product of roots. For the sum of the roots, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 equals negative b over a. We substitute the value of b, which is 6. We now have negative 6 over value of a is 3. Simplify, negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. This is now the sum of the roots, negative 2. For the product of the roots, x sub 1 times x sub 2 equals c over a. Substitute the value of c, which is negative 9, and value of a, which is positive 3. We simplify, negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. This is now the product of the roots. To check if the answers are correct, let's find the roots of 3x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals 0 using any of the methods of solving quadratic equations. Then determine the sum and the product of the roots that will be obtained. Our answer for example 1 is the sum and product of the roots of 3x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals 0 are negative 2 and negative 3 respectively. Let's do the method of solving quadratic equations by factoring to check if our answers are correct. Let's factor 3x squared plus 6x minus 9. But before that, we will divide both sides by 3. And then, we simplify 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. 6x divided by 3 is 2x. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3 equals 0 divided by 3 is 0. We factor x squared plus 2x minus 3. The factors are x plus 3 and x minus 1. The factors of x squared are x and x. And then, we get the factors of negative 3 whose sum is 2. So, the factors of negative 3 whose sum is 2 are 3 and negative 1. Let's check. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. 3 plus negative 2 is positive 2. After getting the factors, we will equate to 0. X plus 3 equals 0. Then, applying the subtraction property of equality, we subtract 3 to both sides of the equation. And then, we simplify x equals negative 3. We name it as x sub 1 for our first root. Next is the x minus 1. We equate it to 0. Applying addition property of equality, we add 1 to both sides of the equation. And then simplify, we now have x equals 1. We name it as x sub 2 equals 1. This is our second root. And then, we get the sum of the roots, x sub 1 plus x sub 2. X sub 1 is negative 3 plus x sub 2 is positive 1. We get negative 2. We get the product of the roots, x sub 1 times x sub 2 equals x sub 1 is negative 3 times x sub 2 is positive 1. Their product is negative 3. As you can see, the sum we get here, negative 2, is equal to the sum of the roots here, which is negative 2. And the product of the roots here is negative 3, while the product here is negative 3. So, our answer, sum of the roots is negative 2, while the product of the roots is negative 3. Let's have example 2. Use the values of A, B, and C to determine the sum and product of roots of x squared minus 11x plus 28 equals 0. To determine the sum and product, let's use the values of A, B, and C. Since our equation is in standard form, we will now identify the values of A, B, and C. A is 1, B is negative 11, and C is 28. And then, we will substitute these values to the sum and product of roots. Sum of the roots, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 equals negative b over a. Negative times b is negative 11 So we have negative 11 here over A, which is positive 1. Simplify, negative times negative 11 is positive 11 over 1. Therefore, the sum of the roots is 11. For the product of the roots, x sub 1 times x sub 2 equals c over a. Substitute, the value of c is 28 and the value of a is 1. And then we simplify, the product of the roots is equal to 28. Therefore, the sum and product of the roots of x squared minus 11x plus 28 equals 0 are 11 and 28 respectively. To check if the answers are correct, let's find the roots of x squared minus 11x plus 28 equals 0. We will use the factoring method of solving quadratic equation. The factors of x squared minus 11x plus 28 are x minus 7 and x minus 4. The factors of x squared are x and x. The factors of 28 whose sum of negative 11 are negative 7 and negative 4. They are both negative, kaya positive ang kanilang product. If we add negative 7 and negative 4, we will get negative 11. If we multiply negative 7 and negative 4, we get positive 28. Then, we equate x minus 7 to 0. Then, solve for x. We add 7 to both sides of the equation. Simplify, we get x sub 1 equals 7. This is our first root. Next, we equate x minus 4 to 0 and then we add 4 to both sides of the equation. Then simplify, we now have x sub 2 equals 4. This is our second root. We will now get the sum of the roots. X sub 1 plus x sub 2 equals x sub 1 is 7, x sub 2 is 4. The sum of 7 and 4 is 11. Meanwhile, the product of the roots x sub 1 times x sub 2 is equal to x sub 1 is 7, x sub 2 is 4. The product of 7 and 4 is 28. So as you can see, the sum of the roots is 11 and the product of the roots is 28. So the answer for the sum is 11 and the product is 28. Let's have example 3. Determine the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is 7 and the product of roots is 12. There are two different ways of determining a quadratic equation, given the sum of the roots and the product of the roots. Let's have the method 1. The sum of the roots is 7, while the product of roots is 12. We will find the factors of 12 whose sum is 7. These are 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 plus 4 is 7. This will be the roots of the quadratic equation. After getting the roots, we will write this in this form. X equals 3 and x equals 4. We apply the subtraction property of equality to x equals 3. We subtract 3 to both sides of the equation. And in x equals 4, we apply the subtraction property of equality. We subtract 4 to both sides of the equation. Simplify, we now have x minus 3 equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0. After that, we use the principle of zero product. We multiply x minus 3 and x minus 4 equals 0. We will use the FOIL method. First terms, the product is x times x is x squared. Outer terms, x times negative 4 is negative 4x. Inner terms is negative 3 times x. So we get the sum negative 4x plus negative 3x is negative 7x. And then for the last terms, negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12 equals 0. This is now the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is 7 and product of roots is 12 is x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. This is now our quadratic equation. Let us check by doing the method 2.
Pwede nating i-represent ang standard form ng quadratic equation gamit ang sum of the roots at product of the roots as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 into
X squared minus sum of roots x plus product of roots equals 0. This equation will be used in determining the quadratic equation given the sum of the roots and product of roots. We now have x squared minus sum of roots is 7. So we have 7 minus 7 x plus the product of roots is 12. So we have plus 12 equals 0. As you can see, method 1 and method 2, using the two methods, we got the same answers. So the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is 7 and product of roots is 12 is x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Let's have example 4. Determine the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is negative 5 and product of roots is negative 36. We will use the second method. This is the formula x squared minus sum of roots x plus product of roots equals 0. We substitute the sum of roots and product of roots. We now have x squared minus sum of roots is negative 5, x plus product of roots is negative 36. Then we simplify. x squared negative times negative 5 is positive 5x. Positive times negative 36 is negative 36 equals 0. Therefore, this is our quadratic equation. The quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is negative 5 and product of roots is negative 36 is x squared plus 5x minus 36 equals 0. Let's check if the answer is correct by determining the quadratic equation using the roots. The first method that we did a while ago. We will find the factors of negative 36 whose sum is negative 5. These are negative 9 and positive 4. Negative 9 times 4 is negative 36. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. We will write this in the form of x equals negative 9 and x equals 4. And then, we apply the addition property of equality. We add 9 to both sides of the equation for x equals negative 9. For x equals 4, we subtract 4 to both sides of the equation. So we applied subtraction property of equality. Simplify, we get x plus 9 equals 0, while on the other hand, x minus 4 equals 0. Then, we use the zero product property. We multiply x plus 9 and x minus 4, then equate to 0. We use the FOIL method in finding the product of x plus 9 and x minus 4. X times x is x squared. For the outer terms, x times negative 4 is negative 4x. For the inner terms, 9 times x is 9x. We get the sum of 9x and negative 4x, which is 5x. For the last terms, positive 9 times negative 4 is negative 36 equals 0. Therefore, the quadratic equation is x squared plus 5x minus 36 equals 0. This is the same as our first method. So, the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is negative 5 and product of roots is negative 36 is x squared plus 5x minus 36 equals 0. Let's have example 5. Determine the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is 3 over 2 and product of roots is negative 3 over 4. Using the equation we used earlier, which is x squared minus sum of roots x plus product of roots equals 0, we substitute the sum of roots by 3 over 2 and product of roots by negative 3 over 4. We now have x squared minus sum of roots is 3 over 2, x plus product of roots is negative 3 over 4 equals 0. We simplify x squared minus 3 over 2x positive times negative 3/4 is negative 3 over 4 equals 0. To determine the quadratic equation, use the LCD of 2 and 4, which is 4. we will multiply both sides of the equation by the LCD, which is 4. We now get 4 times x squared is 4x squared. 4 times negative 3 over 2x is negative 12 over 2x. 4 times negative 3 over 4 is negative 12 over 4 equals 0 times 4 is 0. We do the distributive property here. And then, we simplify. We now have 4x squared. Negative 12 over 2 is negative 6. X, negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3 equals 0. Therefore, the quadratic equation whose sum of the roots is 3 over 2 and product of roots is negative 3 over 4 is 4x squared minus 6x minus 3 equals 0. To check if the answer is correct, let's determine the sum of roots and the product of roots using the values of A, B, and C. Let's identify the values of A, B, and C in this equation. A is 4, B is negative 6, and C is negative 3. After that, we will substitute the values of A, B, and C to sum of the roots and product of the roots. For the sum of the roots, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 equals negative b over a. We substitute b, which is negative 6, so we have negative times negative 6 all over 4. Negative times negative 6 is positive 6 over 4, and then we simplify it to lowest term. We now have 3 over 2. For the product of the roots, we have x sub 1 times x sub 2 equals c over a, which is our c is negative 3 and our a is positive 4. So this is now in lowest term. Therefore, our sum of the roots is 3 over 2 and the product of the roots is negative 3 over 4. It satisfies the given. So, our answer for x squared minus 6x minus 3 equals 0 is correct. And now that you learned how to find the sum and the product of roots of quadratic equation and determine the quadratic equation given the sum of roots and product of roots, I want you to take this challenge. For the first challenge, use the values of A, B, and C of each of the following quadratic equations in determining the sum and the product of its roots. Verify your answers by obtaining the roots of the equation. For number 1, x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Number 2, x squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. Number 3, 2x squared plus 7x plus 3 equals 0. Number 4, 3x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 0. And number 5, 6x squared minus 5x minus 4 equals 0. For the second challenge, determine the quadratic equation given the sum of roots and product of roots. For number 1, the sum is 8 and the product is 12. For number 2, the sum is negative 8, the product is 15. For number 3, the sum is 4, the product is negative 32. For number 4, the sum is 7/4 and the product is 3/8. And for number 5, the sum is 7/12 and the product is -5/6. Okay, good luck in taking the challenge. Before I end this video, I would like to share a simple quotation. Whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. Yes, you are right. You can. I know that you can do it. Thank you so much. Stay safe and have a great day.